That's so much.
Is it time? Are we on?
Oh, shoot. Is it rolling?
We're live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So, give me one moment here. We're doing things a little bit on the fly. So today we had scheduled. There we go. We had scheduled Jay Thomas, a wonderful trumpeter, saxophonist, flautist, clarinetist, musician extraordinaire, and he called not too long ago. He's sick with the flu, so we're going to reschedule that. But in lieu of Jay being here, the wonderful Jacques Willis agreed to step in at the very last minute, and he's here to come answer tons of questions that I barrage him with about music. But this is a boon to all of you because Jacques is an excellent musician, an excellent educator, has toured all over the world and played with lots of different people and has lots of great experience which you can benefit from. So I'm still going to do a wonderful interview for you today. If you have questions, feel free to let us know. Put the questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to get to them in real time or after the fact. Also, I should say before I get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors. That, of course, is the Museum of Glass, KNKX, Ted Brown Music, Tacoma Creates, Edward Jones Financial Consultant, Rick Gray, Titus Will Cars, and I believe that's everybody. So thank you to them for making this possible, and thank you to you for making this possible by joining us today. So, Jacques, I was looking. It looks like it's been like maybe, geez, I mean, you've done a lot of these concerts with us, but it's been about like 6 years since we've done an interview, I think.
It's been a while. We did like a couple near the beginning, I think.
Yes. So, and again, this is last minute, so I didn't put a bunch of questions together. But what I would like to ask you is we were talking about music notation. Now, when I got started with like writing and arranging years ago, a lot of it was done by hand. And I remember in high school when music notation software started coming into existence, it was not very good.
It was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And so fast forward, I think we both attended Cornish College of the Arts together. And this would have been, I think I graduated in 2002, and they just started adding Finale as curriculum there. It had just began, which was, and I didn't get to take the class because I was finishing up. Did you take that class while you were there?
I did not. I was like super resistant to software for a long time.
Okay. And so then fast forward again, I was using on the iPad for some things. I did a lot of stuff by hand, pencil and paper. And then there was Notion on the iPad. And prior to that, everyone was either using Sibelius or Finale. Those were kind of the big ones, which have since then Finale's kind of phased out. It's no longer.
It's over, I think.
Yeah.
I think you can still, if you bought it, you can still use it, but there's no more support. And if you were doing subscription, it's over.
Right. So for people that are doing music, I mean, obviously being able to do it by hand with pencil and paper is a good skill to have, but also if you're going to use notation software, one of the good ones that I've had a lot of luck with, and we were just discussing this yesterday, you've just started using, is MuseScore. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, it's great, right? So I had like a bare bones version of, I think it was Finale for years. Like it was just on a disc, and I would use that, and it was not very user friendly, but if you needed a computer chart, you could do it. And then eventually I switched to Notion, which you suggested to me, which is good if it's on your phone or on an iPad. I finally bit the bullet because I'm like a lot of people where you have to learn a new piece of software and it's like drudgery, right? You're like, oh no, I have to relearn how to enter stuff. Like I don't want to deal with it. Now is the best time I've seen in history to get in on it. For sure, the software's the best as far as like what it does automatically and how easy it is to get it to look the way you want. And you have access to AI tools now that weren't a thing where like if you have a question, you can get an answer very quickly, or at least it'll put you on the right track.
And the nice thing about MuseScore, at least from my own experience, I mean, I'm definitely not writing for blockbuster films or anything like that, but just for utilitarian stuff that I need for teaching or for writing for real life musicians in gig situations. MuseScore is a free resource. You don't have to pay. It's open source. It's free, and it's very, very good in terms of what its capabilities offer.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of little tweaks that work out better. Like a good example is like I had to transpose a chart for soprano saxophone, and it asks you what instrument it's for. You tell it, and it tailors the chart. It's not just where it mathematically moves it. It like moves it in a way where it's like, oh yeah, this would be conducive to being easy to read on the saxophone. It does the accidentals in a way where it's like, oh, this makes more sense. It doesn't just blindly put it in. You know, a good example is, put it in some bizarre key like A sharp major or something, because technically it's a whole step up, and you're like, well, that's not really what I meant. Like, I want it to be easy to read. So a lot of those things have been ironed out, which is nice. And people, because it's open source, regular people are always working on it, so improvements are rapid. Like if there's a problem, it gets fixed.
So now, how long have you started? How long has it been since you began using MuseScore?
About 6 months where I really started using it regularly, and then the last, I'll say 2 months, I use it like every day to do something, right? Because I've been making a lot of new charts, and I've been making stuff for my students, which I used to do everything by hand, like for years. And like by hand is, you want to be able to do that if you want to be able to write stuff down, but once you're like, can do it by hand, you can swap to the computer.
And the nice thing, I mean, I've kind of found, I agree with what you're saying, is if you need to move something into another key for another instrument, it's much easier to do it just by pushing a button as opposed to, I mean, yeah, you want to be able to do that skill by hand, but being able to save time or to send that information to somebody else quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, and who knows
nice.
who's going to be on the, you have a gig with just somebody random that comes up and you're like, oh, I need a transposition for that person, and you don't have it. Well, you can do it in a second, and you still have to eyeball it, but like the error ratio is much lower, which is nice.
So since making the switch over for the last 6 months to MuseScore, do you find yourself doing a lot more charts than you had been doing in the past?
Oh, yeah, I've done more charts in the last 6 months than I've done in like the last 3 years, I think. Like I was learning tunes over the last 3 years and just putting them on my brain and not make, I'd make like a hand chart that was for nobody. It'd be like, I'd have my note, my scrap music paper, and it'd have my notes and different information about it, but it wasn't like a chart I would hand to another person. Now that I have MuseScore, it's like I'm going back and taking all those and turning them into pristine charts, so if I ever want to give it to somebody else, or I have tunes, you just put them on the shelf and you kind of forget you were even working on it, but you have it in a big folder with everything, and you're like, oh yeah, it's that tune, I should look at that again and see if there's something to do with it. Like, absolutely.
So, and I know that you've done a fair amount of, and you still do a fair amount of band leading. So at this point, I mean, have you taken a lot of your older stuff that you've done by hand and redone it into MuseScore? Or
it's like I abandoned a lot of that music, honestly. It's like a good example is like I'm playing with Devon Lewis Limited Edition, and he wrote a message about being like, maybe we should get some new music into the band. We've already put out 2 records, and like when we play the gigs, we don't play that often, so it's not so detrimental that we're playing a lot of the same songs we've done for years. And my suggestion was, let's dumpster everything and start fresh. I was like, it's time. And I was like, man, I kind of feel that way about most of the stuff. Like I looked through my old book and I was like, I don't want to play any of these, even though I like them. It's like, I've done them. They're done maybe. Like all my old, and also it's an impetus to just start. You can always grab something old. It's not like it's going to go away, but just have a whole fresh palette feels.
That's interesting that you say that, and I agree. But it also brings to mind, I'm thinking about how Duke Ellington would take something like take the A Train and keep redoing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, that was a big money maker. That's like I went and saw, what's his name? The Take 5 guy, Dave Brubeck. I saw Dave Brubeck, and of course he played Take 5. And of course it was no different. He didn't even change it. He was like, oh, this is the money tune. All the other songs I didn't recognize any of them because I was too young to know him. I'm sure he did a lot of hits. It was the only one that got applause just for existing in the show. And I was like, oh, yeah, I get it. It's like how Dizzy Gillespie, he would always change it, but he did Night in Tunisia on every show because that's the big hit, right? Don't bite the money one.
So, out of your book of tunes, what's your money tune?
Oh, there are none. No money is made. No one's like, oh, can you play that too? Nothing is known more than anything else. It's all for me without question.
Well, and I should say again, this is a complete last minute interview because Jay is sick, so this conversation is going to go all over the place,
all of 30 seconds.
But we had just talked about this yesterday, so we're by no means endorsed by MuseScore. We're just musicians that work a lot, and we were talking about this, and I figured other musicians might be interested, either musicians or educators, interested in hearing about this kind of stuff because it's important.
And I think it's good to get because I was pretty resistant to software. How easily I got into it. You're like, oh, well, if someone like me can do it, then it's obviously good. I have my students, or I told them, well, why don't you try it out? And everyone's had good success, and their charts come back and they're legible, and there's not crazy stuff on it where I'm like, oh, it's all, sometimes you get software where the way that it ties notes or the way it does rests are really bizarre and very unfriendly to read. It tries to avoid that. You can see it try and not let you make a horrendous chart. It's not perfect, but
I would say that too. I mean, I was resistant to notation software for a long time. I guess for me, I began with Finale, and I got in there and I had no clue. And if you're a working musician in the Seattle area, yeah. But somebody like most musicians in the Northwest, jazz musicians, you know, if you need a chart done and someone who knows Finale inside and out, you go to Dave Marriott. He's the guy that knows all of this stuff. Now with Finale kind of going, I mean, a lot of the guys are still going to still use that, but it's going to change. For me, I started with Sibelius because it was a lot more user-friendly. And so I did that for several years. I had a couple versions. And then I can't remember why I stopped using it, but I just did, and I went back.
Did they change to subscription or no?
Possibly. I don't remember.
There's like that thing where like it's all subscription model, which like I do understand is better for them
Correct.
Financially.
But for me, what I was writing for mostly was just piano, bass, and just saxophone, bass, and drums. So I would just do a lot of that stuff by hand, do things really, really quickly. And then I can't remember how and why I got started on using MuseScore, but I did, and it was I was using Notion before that on the iPad, which was good, but then for some reason
not very user friendly.
Correct.
But it's nice to have something on your phone.
Yeah, and when on my iPad I could do it that way too. But when I started using MuseScore, I was blown away by how easily it was for me to get in and learn it and right away start getting good results, not only for charts but also for educational things. And so I guess what I would say, maybe it sounds like we're both saying the same thing, if you don't know a lot about this and you want to use a music notation software, and I'm not talking about like Logic or Pro Tools or stuff like, I'm talking about like for music notation, like writing charts, MuseScore is really user-friendly.
I haven't used any of like the digital workstations where you actually build songs or anything, like, so I don't know that much about that area.
But if you're learning how to write music, it's a good resource for getting in right away, and it's very user-friendly. So I guess we're saying it's worth checking out if you haven't already done so. So anyways, I wanted to ask you, you began on drums, correct?
I started, and it was drums and vibraphone at the same time, where like I did one lesson, like I'd go every other week, one lesson on drums, one lesson on vibes, and it was like that for a while. And then we did predominantly drums and we do little stints of that. But initially, it was both, back and forth. And I hated the vibes, and I loved the drums, and I hated when it was vibes week for like the first year probably, and then I turned on to it a little more.
Why was it every other? Did your instructor just plan it that way?
He said that's what we were doing. Like I went in assuming I went in for drum lessons. I'm going to learn how to play drums. I want to play drums. And then he just told me that's what we were doing, and that's what we did. And it was very beneficial that he did that. Like he didn't, like I think it was just coincidence that he was skilled on both, because not everyone is. That's not like a normal thing. I think as a kid, you don't know anything, right? I was 13 or whatever. I was like, oh, I guess this is what drum lessons are. You do everything. I did like timpani. I did the whole percussion gamut, but like it was predominantly those two. And that was abnormal as far as what you get in lessons. Like,
do you find, just off the top of my head, thinking about the amount of skilled vibraphonists, let me clarify. I'm not talking about classical, but vibraphonists that can improvise, the number of those as compared to, for example, like saxophone players or trumpet players, there's not as many. Do you find that in your experience to be as true as well?
Oh, 100%. And like I can tell you why. It's not even like there's no mystery to it. Like a starter mallet instrument that is a real instrument is when I was a kid, the cheapest you could get something for, even if it was like used, was like $2,500, and it was not very nice. It wasn't like anywhere near what I use now, right? Like you get something now, it's like $7,000 to $10,000 for basically what I would describe as a real instrument, and something you could just play for the rest of your life. There's no, like you can get a trumpet for like, I want to say what, $300, $400, maybe less. Like you can get, I don't know how much a starter saxophone is, but I know it's less than $2,500. Like the kids in beginner band, they can, you can rent it. You rent a saxophone. You don't rent a vibraphone. You get like the kids' bell set, which is like literally adjacent to like a child's toy. Like it barely counts as the instrument. Like if I trained my whole life on that bell set and then swap to vibraphone, it'd be totally alien. They're not the same instrument. So like the threshold for entry is so tough. And when they first came up with the instrument, the idea was, there was like a piano in every home. That was the sell. Like all these companies were like, oh, like you want to have a piano, it's a piece of furniture, it's part of your living room. And then a lot of people got pianos and like, we got to figure something else out. And so there were all those like home organs. Like I'm sure you remember, you see them at the Goodwill all the time where they have these like kind of goofy organs you've never heard of. They're £1,000,000 and everyone had those in their living room. And then they tried again where they were like, oh, everyone bought an organ. Great. Everyone should have a vibraphone in your living room. And that didn't go. People didn't go for it. They didn't buy it. So like it became this like niche instrument. But it started as like just another like, oh, doesn't your living room need to be all these instruments? Like, which I think we've moved away from as a society a little bit just because of like digital keyboards. So like lots of people still have keyboards, but like it's not so much where it's like, oh, I have the piano and it's beautiful furniture and it's got this other function where, like anyone in the house that plays or someone that visits can play. And like, it's kind of a lost thing in our society. In a way, it's a nice thing. I know you have a piano, but you play. I have a piano, I play. But like, I'm trying to think. The amount of students I have that have a real piano is low that take lessons. It is pretty low.
We had Bobby Medina last month. You were here. You were on the gig. But during the interview, he was talking about how he got started playing accordion. And there was a door-to-door accordion salesman that came to sell accordions.
So cool.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if someone showed up today?
Yeah, I don't know. Even many things could happen. We'll leave that alone, I suppose. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you though is you play drums very well. You play vibes very well. You play piano very well. I believe I can assume the answer to this question, but what instrument do you spend the most time on now currently?
Now it is exclusively piano. That is the only thing I practice. It is very rare that I do anything on the other ones. I have a couple things I do in the week. Like I go and play on Fridays with Wayne Horvitz and Jeff Harper. We play like piano trio, but I only play snare drum and I only play brushes in that. And like, that's it. Like, I'm like, nope, like I don't get hi-hat, I don't get bass, I don't get anything else. And then I try and make it where it still makes musical sense. And that's definitely to like bring up that level of like brush playing. There's a real subtlety to that thing that like I kind of skipped over for years and years. Now getting to play in the trio with you, it's like the value of it is so much higher because we don't use any amplifiers. Nobody does. We just play acoustically, so I don't get punished for playing something that gets kind of covered up. And you can hear, I mean, you're on the gigs. Like we played the other day at, I forgot the name of it, where we took the ferry, the theater. Bainbridge, right? So it was like totally quiet in there and it was like a big echoey room. And so I got to play lots of brushes where you could hear all the sweeps and stuff. And it's not like if we play at kind of a noisy club where like I play a little more sticks because a lot of the tiny motions are lost. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, like it's not worth it here because I can't even hear it a foot away. But in a quiet, empty room, well, like here, right? If no one's making noise in here, this is a great room to play brushes in. And like, it's nice to have that full range of sound. So like, I do things to get practice in, but I'm not sitting and doing like exercises. Like a piano, I still do things that I think that I would classify as exercises sometimes, and it's a lot of maintenance related stuff for sure. And they all kind of, I mean, the physicality of them all connects. It's not like when I pull the vibes out, the visual of it is still there, and like technically I'm still basically in the same spot because I play so much drums with you. Yeah. It doesn't feel like I'm like rusty. It doesn't feel rusty because of that, I think.
Is it fairly like if someone wanted to learn to play the vibraphone and they played competently on the piano, is it a big changeover to switch to go for, I guess it's not in terms of the notes because, as you say, visually it's laid out, but technique-wise, I mean...
Physically, it's very different. That's the thing I've noticed, and you can check it out because, you bring your vibes to jam sessions, and sometimes piano players who vibes isn't their instrument, but they can move around on it. Like, they'll play on it, and then you can see the breakdown in the two techniques when it goes because like they'll play like all with their right hand, so they won't have like that alternating thing where it's smooth at all. It'll be like predominantly rights and like the occasional left, and you're like, oh yeah, like you're treating it like it's like as if you're playing piano and you only have one finger available instead of like, no, this thing is like that. It's mostly back and forth, right? So it's like it's different. But as far as like stringing lines together, it's funny because some piano players can see the instrument and some of them you can tell they're having a real problem because the spacing is so much bigger. It's kind of bizarre. Like Eric Verlinde was real good at just like playing the normal stuff he would do. It would just be slower because his technique wasn't there. But I see some other people be like, oh yeah, this will work, and then their like eyes trip out because it's just, the piano, the vibraphone's about as big as a piano as far as the keyboard. Piano's what, 8 octaves, or I forget. It's 88 keys, but the vibraphone's only 32. And it's the same size, so like everything's doubled, and it gets bigger as you get to the bottom half.
Well, and also too, I mean, it has to do with, forgive if I don't to do the term right, sticking, right?
Yeah,
it's sticking, and then you have like one mallet per hand or 2 mallets per hand.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like most people that are sitting in that have never played, they just take 2. I mean, nobody picks up 4 as their, if they've never played before. It's very rare. Like piano players just ditch the other 2. But yeah, you do play with 4. That's its own thing technically for sure. It's like the weird little technical things. I would say it's vibraphone is a little more macro versus like piano, which can be very micro, right? Individual fingers and your hand's still working as a unit. Vibraphone, you are using your fingers, but they're working more as like a unit. Just like when you play drums, you can use them individually, but like the bulk of it is that your hand is working as some kind of team, and there might be there might be a downstroke and an upstroke motion. It's pretty rare that you're like switching between individual fingers. That's almost like a circus trick when you see somebody do that.
So it's not a time for individual achievement.
There it is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Get the baseball bat. You know.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well then, if you're doing 2 mallets per hand, and again we're getting down into the weeds here, but yeah, I'm curious about this. So you said you studied percussion with your first teacher. Was it more classical rudiments and technique, or was it just all at the same time?
He did both, right? So like we did, like it was focused on like for drums. It was like drum set, but then I did like drum core stuff. Like that was in there like right away, where I was like playing rudimental snare drum pieces, and then I was playing in the symphony, like the kids symphony. So I had to do like stuff with him that was classical. Like I did like the percussion ensemble at the college, so that was like partially classical, and then I was playing like gigs at night, which was like distinctly jazz and kind of like a leaned into like Latin jazz, or like kind of like Cal Jader style sort of Latin jazz, so I don't know what you call that, like Americanized Latin music, you know what I mean? It's not like the Buena Vista Social Club. It's like some kind of mix, or like Stan Getz, like that's a good example. He's distinctly jazz, but he was like, oh, like Latin rhythm section, and then it melded together. And then on vibes, I was doing vibraphone and marimba. Marimba I would do more like classical literature on, because there's actual like a larger amount of it, or there was like in the 90s when I was doing it, there was like set out pieces that you would do if you were going to go to college. So I was doing like some of those, and they were like works, they were actual marimba works that you would do. But like, I never thought I got that far at it. It wasn't where I was like, oh, I'm going to be a classical marimba major. Like that's a very specific thing when you see the high level people. It'd be like if you were a classical saxophone player, you've seen that. It's such a specific thing, and it's so far away from like Dexter Gordon. You're like, it's almost not the same thing in its own way, right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, in terms of just the world of vibraphone, since we're talking about it, I mean, obviously, you mentioned Cal Jader, there's Lionel Hampton, there's
Bobby Hutcherson, there's
I was going to ask you, so let's really quickly, for you, influences on vibraphone, older musicians. Not like modern day current on the scene musicians. So vibraphone is.
So I can say exactly who it was. It was Gary Burton forever. He was like the only guy that I recognized as having much value on the instrument. Like I gravitated toward the way he played, and still do. Like he's an anomaly, right? He's very, very good. He's very good. I always liked the way he sounded. As soon as I discovered him, and I feel like people don't talk about him that much, but I think Victor Feldman is probably from a technical standpoint, probably the most physically gifted, and also as far as the way he puts lines together. It's funny because like he plays vibraphone, he's unique. He plays piano and he sounds a lot like Bill Evans, and he plays drums and he sounds like Joe Morello. And I'm like, that guy's the top of the mountain as far as like, he's just all three, and they're all super high level. And like, that's very, very rare. So like, I mean, that's a little bit why I got interested in the third one. I was like, oh, it was always this third thing that it was like an unchecked box in a way, where it's like, oh, like my favorite guy does all three, like, but I can't, it's like, that thing in the back of your head where you're like, well, I want to be able to do that too. And then seeing how they all connect, you're like, oh, I get it. Like they are related, and so it's beneficial.
Yeah, I've had other guests on these interviews that talk about, they specialize in one instrument, but they're very good at other instruments. And one of the things, reading bios about our heroes, a lot of the guys that played piano, Coltrane played some piano,
Yeah.
Sonny Stitt played some piano, Clifford Brown played some piano, Eric Dolphy, on and on, Miles,
And
Dizzy Gillespie.
a bunch of people played like drums as well.
That's
and
exactly
were
what I was
good.
going to say.
Yeah.
That's the other big one. The common denominator is being able to play some good, or at least have some skills on the drums, which I need to address at some point.
Well, you have the drums now. You're good. That was what's holding you back, Kareem.
But those things, I mean, playing some sort of harmonic instrument, drums, and then whatever else your main instrument might be. I think that informs all the aspects of melody, harmony, and rhythm.
Yeah.
The things that we need.
And I'll say playing piano has been like super invaluable for vibraphone and just for music in general, because there's that thing of like, especially if you're playing like stride or some kind of style where your left hand's not allowed to take a break. I found out that there were like holes in my memory. I'd like hesitate if I forgot what the changes were or forgot what something was. And you just give yourself like a couple of rests in your phrase to remember. And when your left hand is just never stopping, you're like, oh, you either know it or you don't. And it's immediately obvious when you do and don't know it. And I was like, oh yeah, like suddenly now when I go back to vibraphone where I'm not in charge of all that, it's like my sense of how a tune fits together is way better than it ever was. Because of that, just like, oh yeah, just like don't give yourself the freebie of like, oh, I'll just take a creative pause. It's not. It's where you're listening to everyone else do the work for you, and you're like, well, if you're doing all the work yourself, then you know it, right?
And we've talked about this a little bit because I mean we both teach several instruments, so. But with piano students, having them do simple stride in the left hand, not only to know the chords, but also to keep the time in check. And so when we talk about that for people, and I'm not a brilliant pianist, I'm a functional pianist, and you're an excellent pianist
I'm
as
getting
well.
closer. I'm getting within striking range of being able to play. Hopefully.
Yeah. And it's like an onion. There's many layers. But when we're talking about stride piano, for people that don't understand this, you're just taking a triad, a simple triad. You play on beat 1, you play the root. And on beat 2, you play the 3rd and the 5th. On beat 3, you play the root. On beat 4, you play the 3rd and the 5th, all very close together. And you're just going boom, chick, boom, chick,
and
boom,
you start especially like so the smallest of kids, like when you have like a kid at 5 or 6. I don't even have them do that. I have them just play the triad as quarter notes. That's first, right? Little kid, you're like, okay, they're not going to be able to pivot and play a melody. When they get a little further, you do that, right? Where you're like, oh, root, 3rd, 5th, back and forth. When they get a little bigger, you go root, 3rd, 5th, low 5th, 3rd, 5th, where suddenly that bottom finger is now marking beat 1 and 3 differently. And then as they get older, you're like, okay, root, full chord, 5th, full, like you're doing more stuff in the voicing on 2 and 4. So there's a real nice progression of growth that also goes well with the fact that kids' hands get bigger as they get, like they start out and their hands are barely big enough to reach an octave. You have a lot of kids where they're stretching hard, and you're like, okay, we're going to make it so it's easy, and when you get bigger, that'll be easier.
Yeah. Well, and yes to that, but also one of the big things that I'm sure you've come across, I mean, I've talked to multiple musicians on this interview series about this. One of the big things that people struggle with is time. Mm-hmm. And if you start doing that, that gives you a home base or an anchor. It's like, here's my quarter note. You have to deal with your time. You can't, there's no way around that. Mm-hmm. You have to confront it.
Yep. I feel like that, so like that type of piano playing is very good. I feel like all the juggling I did was kind of invaluable for, my time I already had a lot of it worked out. Like it wasn't like it was having problems, but it like validated the fact that I do have a good sense of time, because the amount of things, the timing involved and the pre-planning involved in that thing, you can't do it because the objects are in the air floating. So if you find somebody who has a tough time with time, I try stuff where I'll have them catch a single object to see what's going on, because that is timing, right? You're like, and you see the object in the air, you threw it, you're anticipating it coming down, and see if there's like a mechanical problem, or if it's a visual problem, or if it's a timing problem. Like it's like it takes the sound out of it, right? Because there's not a lot of sound work in juggling. So you're like, okay, is there something else that's a disconnect? it's usually not sound. It's usually something physical is what I've found. Like if you take their physicality out of it, I think most people have what I would describe as good timing. But like the connecting your vision audio to your hands, sometimes it's like it's just underdeveloped. Like, some people just didn't have to do it that much in their life. So even though they assume they should be able to do it because they can kind of hear it in their brain, there's no reason that there would be a connection to your hands. Like if you've never done it. Like I've had adult students that are baffled by the fact that their fingers won't do what they want them to. And I'm like, well, have you done any fine motor control stuff in your work? And like their work will be some kind of thing where it's all up in your mind. It's a lot of cognitive work. And you're like, oh, well, like you haven't played in the physical realm as much. I don't know why you would be any good at it. You've never done it. But like people are like, if I'm good at one thing, I should be good at everything, right? Which is, I have not found that to be true, unfortunately, if only.
Really quickly, you remind me of a conversation we had not that long ago. I mean, we're always talking about music one way or the other in various settings, in between beverages on drinks, beverages and gigs, excuse me. But we were talking about older players and left hands versus more modern players.
Oh, yeah.
And the conversation is they didn't have, or the older players' comments about younger players was that they had weak left hands.
Yeah, that was the specific comic I read, and I didn't get it at the time. And now the more, it's weird because the more, I started working on piano and I was like kind of, I don't know, coming into it with like kind of semi-modern sensibilities, where like you like all the modern guys playing and you're like, oh, that's the cool stuff. And then not getting much traction trying to figure out how to get my left hand to function that way. And so then I started going backwards. I was like, well, maybe like you need to go further back in the chain. And so then I went all the way, eventually ended up all the way back at like Scott Joplin. And I was like, I get it. Like Scott Joplin turned into what stride is and stride and boogie woogie. And those two things eventually shrank into like what is bebop, and then bebop turned into post bop, and then turned into like what is now. And when you go from the backside to it's way easier to figure it out. Where you're like, oh, I get it. Here's like this new convention. Like a good example. Like the thing I found, like I was looking at All Blues, and All Blues, that bass line, it's just like a standard boogie woogie bass line, but they added in some rest. Bum ba da da ba da da da. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da. Well, you listen to the boogie woogie one and it's ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You're like, oh, like it's not even anything. This is nothing new. Like they literally took a thing and just were like, I'll just put a space in there and change nothing else. And it feels totally different, but you're like, oh, well, it's so much easier to come at it from the start and see it open up instead of be like, oh, it's this huge mosaic of information. And then try and go backwards. It's just like, it's like, well, it's the position we're in with the universe, right? Where you're like, oh, how was the universe when it started? Well, now that it's already completely expanded, can we figure it out? And you're like, boy, it'd be really handy if we could see it from like the beginning to now. It'd be way easier, right? It's like, that's how most stuff is. But with music, you can actually get a look at a lot of it, right? Like, or at least a fraction of it.
Jumping back to what we were talking about earlier. So we talked about, or you mentioned some of your early inspirational figures on the vibraphone. Current day vibraphonist, is there anybody that you're checking out that you really enjoy their playing, or is that a tough question?
I fell out of listening to vibraphone players, and I'll say I never really it's funny because I play the instrument and I played it forever, and I never really gravitated toward albums with it. It's like even like Milt Jackson's great, but like I don't like opt to sit around and listen to him ever. Like I'm not like excited about it. Like there's a few, like if Modern Jazz Quartet like comes on the radio or something, like I'll listen, but like I'm not like, oh, I gotta know all, like I don't know the bulk of his career. I don't really know the bulk of Bobby Hutcherson's career. Like it doesn't speak to me for some reason, which is weird because I play the instrument, right? But like most of the people that I copy are like horn players and piano players. Like I mostly copy other instruments. I'm not sure why that is exactly, but like I'm never like, oh, vibraphone. I'm just like, oh yeah. I'm always like kind of shrug where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's that's how it works. Like you hear somebody, we all kind of play this, not the same, but like sounds pretty close to me in a lot of cases.
Do you find, and again, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but for our viewers at home, do you find yourself listening to more piano players than vibraphone players?
Oh, 100%. Like it's almost, I mean, that's a huge amount. Like of what I listen to. I'd say that's the bulk of it. Is like there's either it is a piano record, like a piano trio record, or it's a record where the piano player is centralized on the record. There's a lot of that for sure, right? And it's been that way since I was little. Like the first people I got into was like Thelonious Monk and Chick Corea, right? Those were like two formative things. And Chick Corea came out of knowing about Gary Burton because they have those duo records that were famous. So I got exposed to him, and then I started buying his records. Like, so it started like that, where I was like, oh yeah, these two guys are great. So it was always kind of piano from the beginning, even as far as, I mean, I had like a Buddy Rich record. That was like one of the first records that was given to me, but like I never bought records for the drums. Like I kind of bought them for the tunes in a way. Like I liked Monk's music and I liked Chick's music, depending on the era.
Fair enough. Okay, so last interview 6 years ago. What has changed in the last 6 years in terms of you musically, like where you were? And this is kind of an open-ended question, but where you were as a musician, I guess technique-wise, or more like where your head's at, projects that you're working on in the last 6 years?
You know, I can say like, I mean, as far as like the overarching project that I've had is obviously like upping my ability to play the piano. And like I've sort of had, I've been thinking a lot over like the last 2 years about kind of the what is improvising and the nature of improvising, you know, because I had like a pretty concrete idea about how it could fit together. And then the way your development has been since we've known each other, it's like I feel like you and I went at the same problem from two different sides, and the more time that passes, the more I've noticed that we're kind of just meeting in the middle, where I was like, oh, it's like there's a thing that is fluent improvising, and like you can get to it different ways, and they all kind of end up being the same in the end. And so like it's like I've been putting more time in on like learning more tunes, and like just being real meticulous about like being like, oh, I'm gonna like play all these tunes in all 12 keys, because it actually feels nice after you get a little bit of traction with it, you know. And like doing it with tunes where like normally I'd be like, oh, that's, you know, like good example is like Donna Lee, like I'll sit around and play that in different keys, and it used to be like, oh, that's like way too much, what a bunch of math, like it's not worth the effort in that thing, you know. You'd think like, oh, that's kind of a silly one to do. And then after I started messing with it, I was like, you know, it's not that bad as long as you have like the right attitude about it. And then what you get out of it is like access to like, your ear gets access to the little tones in between scale steps where you really start to recognize what they are, you know, like recognize what a tone outside might represent as far as the harmony is concerned.
Also, too, I would say, switching subjects, but just in terms of things that you've been involved with, like this thing with Wayne and Jeff Harper, that's a new thing.
Yeah, that's
correct?
been like within the last year or a little more than that. Like we just meet on Fridays and like play tunes. So like, yeah.
And there was the project with Evan, Thread of Beauty.
That
and
was a while ago.
Yeah, and then Devon's
limited edition, and then like we put out. I was on that rock and roll record where they play. You know, a lot of these projects they seem to play like 4 times a year because they're more like event based things. You know, like we have a gig coming up with Devon soon, but we don't play like every week, right? Like, and who knows what it would be like if we did. You know, like we did a tour last year. It's that type of thing, right? But like, I put out a record with R.L. Hire. It was like a rock and roll record where like I was doing like part playing on the vibraphone, which like is not, I'm not gonna say is like my strong suit, but it was like interesting to be in there where like I'm playing parts written by somebody. You know, it's like specific part playing stuff and then a few solos, like, and you're more textural. You know, it's different than what I'm used to.
Well, there was the project with Ty Bailey, the
years
Ego
ago.
Bands,
Ego
a long
Band.
time
A
ago.
long time ago, yeah.
But then something with
Ryan
Burns.
Ryan Burns.
Yeah.
What am I talking about? Yeah, so Ryan and I have a band, the Whopper Johns, which also plays kind of when the gigs roll out. We play more frequently, just, you know, different stuff. But we just put out a record with Jeff Harper, Ryan's record, We Ditch Requests, which is, a play on the Oscar Peterson records, We Take Requests. Yeah, and that was great. Like, that was a bunch of Ryan's music, and it was all Ryan's music and some classical stuff. But, yeah, it was really nice to record with that. And, like, and also, like, that ties in, you know, I play every Friday with Jeff. Then it parlayed into, I play with Ryan all the time, and then all three of us made the record together. So we had, like, what do you call it? Like, camaraderie? I don't know. Like, we had some of the same vocabulary already loaded up, basically.
Are you now circling back to the MuseScore stuff? Are you currently writing new tunes? Are you working on new material?
I'm like so I have piano. Is it okay to promote something? Okay, so I have piano starts here. I'm playing on that. It's going to be like vibraphone night on March 18th. It'll be me, Susan Pascal, Ben Thomas, Alex Gilbert, the guy who always runs it, and I believe Mark Seals, although I haven't seen him answer the email yet, but I think he's on the night, right? And they were like, oh, we're doing a tribute to Lionel Hampton, Bobby Hutcherson, and Milt Jackson. And so they were like, everyone's like, he's asking like, hey, what tunes is everybody going to do? And I was like, God, I don't know really. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get on Apple Music and I'm going to like just listen to a lot of the stuff and see like what I gravitate toward. And like I distinctly gravitated toward Benny Goodman. I liked a lot of that stuff better where like Lionel was there playing and I was like, oh, I like a lot of these songs, kind of the best out of them. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like pick 4 of those and I'm not going to worry about covering every guy. And like somebody will do everybody. I was like, I'm going to do the thing that I've already been kind of working on. So like I've been transcribing a lot of those tunes, like, and just making charts where I like the chord changes, because there's real book charts for a lot of them. But like, I think the changes are, I don't know if there's not really wrong changes out in the world, but I'll say not my favorites are in there. And then I'm like, I'm just being a little more meticulous about like, well, what are the chord changes that I think work to a song? Like that's a good example of like that kind of thing you work on. It's like a thing that I used to just be like, oh, I guess it's this, who cares? And you just play. I'm like, no, like I care. If I like the song, maybe I should figure out what the real chords might be or what I think they are, like have an opinion about it.
And it does it work or does it not work? I've had conversations or lessons with wonderful musicians, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, and I'll play a tune.
Names.
Yeah, we need names. We need addresses. No, I'd play the song the way that I've learned it off a recording, and they're like, oh no, this is the way that it should be, and I'm not going to argue with them, but if Dexter Gordon's wrong, I don't want to be right.
Well, and I had a thing I went through because I had a little bit of that. You get pushback from people because that's a little bit of like, it's kind of like a fronting thing. Like, let's say somebody they can play okay, but they have this like knowledge thing that you're not aware of, then they can kind of big dog you. And I was like, well, I think I know the way around this. So like I learned, that's all. I was like, oh, I'll learn that. And I was like, and initially I was just like, I heard, I think it was Coleman Hawkins, his recording is beautiful. And I was like, oh, what are the chord changes? And I figured out the chords that he used, and I was like, these are great, this is awesome. And I was like, I'll check out another recording. Great recording, drastically different chord changes. And then I checked out another one, drastically different. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to figure them all out, and then I'll sort it out in the end. And I found like 9 different ways that people do it. And I was like, well, like, I don't think there are standard changes to this one. Like, it's just changed over time. And then, you'll ask your friends, you'll be like, well, you play this, like, which one do you run into? Bass players are good guys to ask because they end up playing tunes that, they don't select the songbook and they play with singers. So it's like, well, which changes do you end up doing? And so you get a little bit of a window into, oh, mostly this. And then you see like what's in the iReal book, and like it's sort of in the ballpark, and it's better than if you have nothing. You're like, that's good, but like I don't know, if you really like a tune, put the extra time in and figure out all the ways people do it, and then decide what's your favorite. And if you don't like a tune, don't do any work. Like, be like, I don't like that one. Like, just somebody can just tell you what it is. You can be like, whatever. Like, it's not my favorite tune. Here's where it really broke down. So I was like, I really like Irving Berlin. I like a bunch of his songs, right? The best one is Easter Parade. But I was like, well, how many, I started finding like all these Irving Berlin tunes that were really obscure. And I was like, how many tunes did he write? And then I looked it up and it's like, well, there's not a running tally, but it's around like 1,500 tunes. And I was like, 1,500? I was like, that's more than they tell you to learn total. You hear a lot of people say like, you should know 1,000 tunes. That's this magic number. Like that's going to solve all your problems. But I was like, well, that doesn't even cover one composer. So apparently there's enough songs that you can just pick your favorites every single time and discard everything else. There's too much out there, and it's too much. There's more than you'll ever learn that you'll love. So like that means never learn something you don't like, basically. Like that's what I got.
Well, that's what I'll when I'm in that situation, I'll listen to all the different recordings. I'll pick the chords. Like I'll pick, okay, I like this set in this particular part of the song from here.
Oh, yeah,
I like this set here. I Frankenstein it for sure. And then I'll just
too.
Yeah, that's the way.
And it is beneficial though, like if you're like, oh, I'm going to play this song, and let's say a lot of people play it, to know the different pathways, because some people like pathways you don't, and like if you're aware of all of them, and then you're like, oh, okay, we'll do yours, and when it's my turn to solo, maybe I'll do mine, and if your bass player is really attentive, maybe they'll know it too, and they can join you, and if not, then be gracious and do the ones everyone knows to be a cool guy, right? Especially if you're a sideman, like it doesn't pay to force your agenda.
Well, for me, it's when I'm thinking about it, it's just context. Is it like a concert where people have paid tickets and it's a sit-down thing and it's like you can hear a pin drop?
Very different.
Then I'll look at it one way. If we're just showing up at a bar to play for a couple hours and we're part of the environment.
And let's say we're there every other week or every week or something. Then
Yeah.
it's like we've created a rapport where we get to be a little more adventurous.
Totally, but if it's people that I don't know and I really want to play the song, I'll say, okay, you play the song you know it, and I'm going to listen and follow you.
Yeah,
you know?
we're going to be together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Shoot, I just had a question I wanted to ask you, and I've completely spaced on it. We're getting close to the end, though, by the way. So if you have questions for myself or Jacques, please feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to get to them. There's a bit of a time delay here, but I'll try to get to it.
There's a bunch of, where's Jay Thomas?
Where's Jay Thomas? This is clearly not Jay Thomas. If you came to see Jay Thomas, we apologize. He's sick, but we'll get him rescheduled as soon as possible. Okay, what was I going to ask you? Shoot.
It's gone. It's all gone.
It's completely gone. So with your band or with your projects coming up, you're not composing any new music right now, or you are?
I haven't composed anything like really seriously since I put out that solo record. It was like I decided, like, it's all right. So I heard a stand-up comedian, and I know I'm going to stress, I don't think this line of thought is actually true, but I was like, I think I'm going to just embody it temporarily. The comedian Bill Burr made mention of, he was like, I think we've written enough songs. Like there's plenty. That was the joke. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I was like, he's sort of right though. And I think that when I hear a lot of like modern pop music, where I'm like, all of it's very reminiscent of its neighbor, and also very reminiscent of something a little older. And I'm like, then I think back to like old like 1930s like standards where they sing about all the good examples, like love, right? Because there's a lot of songs about love, and you check out all the love songs, and there's a song about every possible type of situation you can have in your head related to that. There's like just thousands of them. Like name a situation, and I guarantee there's 20 songs about it that are really thoughtful. And you're like, well, I'm gonna have to, something unique is gonna have to happen to me for me to actually write something that strikes me as new, right? And until then, I think I'm going to work on other people's stuff that I like, because all that stuff, it'll go somewhere in the end. Like I don't feel like I'm like missing the boat. I'm like it's not like we're running out of tunes, I guess. I sort of, the pressure was off essentially.
But what if you wanted to collect royalties, Jacques?
Well, I would get a band of young musicians, and I would have them write stuff, and I would put my name on it, just like Miles Davis, my favorite guy. Don't let anyone tell you different.
You are a fan of Victor Feldman, so I think some of his songs were
stolen his stuff. My best guy. Yeah, he did. He's thieves.
All right. There is a question here.
Oh my goodness.
From Ruth. Ruth wants to know, when can we hear you play "Hymn to Freedom" on Vibes again?
Oh my goodness. At the Zigzag on. It's When You're Gone. Okay. The one that you're gone. I'm playing vibraphone. At that one.
Well, I was going to say, you're going to play. We're going to have some French artists here.
Right. Yeah,
the French artists are coming here in April. We'll have the wonderful Julian Asti on guitar and Karsten Weiman on drums, and you'll be doing vibes on some of those shows. I haven't figured out which ones.
I know you're going to tell me. I'm not stressed.
But we should play that.
Oh
there.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think have you played that with me before or no?
I think so. It's been a minute.
I have a good chart for it now.
Okay.
So if you want, I can send you the chart.
Praise be to Muse
Yeah,
Score.
exactly.
All right, wonderful. Well, okay, we're getting towards the end here, so I don't see any other questions. Yeah, Justine, yes, it's going to be nice to see you as well in France very soon. Tell Julian to practice. We'll be there quickly. So if someone were to come to you, and I've asked you this question before, but maybe your opinion has changed in the last 6 years. If someone were to come to you in 2026 and they're saying, hey, I want to be a musician, I'm really giving this some thought and I'd like to do this, what are some things that you've personally found helpful or some advice that you think would be invaluable for them to undertake said thing?
I don't know if I've said this before, but I heard a quote, I believe it's from Bill Evans, and it's been the thing that has worked the best for me. He said, if you take care of the music will take care of you. And I think there's a lot of noise and chatter of what you need to do to make your music career work. You know, like you got to be on social media, you got to network, you got to do all these things. There's a big list of things, and I'm not going to say that they're not important. That'd be false. But the most important thing is that you can play very well. That if somebody needs you to be able to do something, you can do it. You want to check all the boxes and just dig under all the stones and just get about as good as you can. And the only other thing is that it pays to be nice. It pays to be a nice person and a good member of society. And I won't say I'm the most easy person to get along with all the time, but I do think that I mean well. And I think people can pick up on that fact, that I think of others, and that matters. So like those two things, if there's a problem with either of those, nothing in those other categories will help you. You know, if you're like, oh, I got a bajillion Facebook followers and you're a jerk and you can't play, it's eventually going to catch up to you. But if you're like, oh, I'm like very kind and I can just play really well, those two things will do more for you than anything else. So get those in place, and then if you can also have like an email list or whatever other thing that matters, that I think that'll do it. You can't have those first two have a deficiency. It'll ruin the entire ship.
Fair. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and filling in last minute, very last minute, like
very last.
An hour before we started.
That is true.
So appreciate your wonderful insights, and thank you to everyone joining us online today. If you have questions that we did not get to, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll do our best to get to them later.
Send them in a letter.
Yeah, send them in a letter. That's right. We're going to take a short pause, and we're going to get Greg Feingold in here, and we're going to start some music in about an hour. So stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.